Imagine standing on the shores of a new world, waves crashing against the rocks and the scent of salt in the air. What would be going through your mind if you were one of the first Europeans to set foot in America? Hope for new beginnings? Fear of the unknown? The discovery of this vast land would alter the course of human history in ways unimaginable. The moment Christopher Columbus landed in the Bahamas in 1492, the very fabric of our world began to change. But how exactly did this moment resonate through the ages, echoing across continents and cultures? Today, we'll explore how the discovery of America not only reshaped nations but redefined the human experience. As we embark on this journey, you might find yourself wondering, what are the immediate consequences of such a monumental discovery? Well, the initial impact was multifaceted economically, politically, and culturally. Columbus's voyage opened the floodgates to European exploration, leading to a dizzying array of expeditions that wiped away old maps and created new ones. Within a few short years, a new world filled with promise and peril was laid bare, forever altering the worldview of countless people on both sides of the ocean. Stick with us as we delve deeper into how this transformative period influenced global dynamics. To grasp the enormity of this moment, let's consider the European mindset leading up to the discovery. Imagine living in a time where the horizon represented the edge of the known universe. The Earth was mostly unexplored, and trade was limited to familiar routes in Europe, Asia, and Africa. What drove Columbus and his contemporaries was more than mere curiosity. It was a thirst for wealth, power, and the allure of new opportunities. But what they found instead would spark a fascination with unimagined territories and diverse cultures. Fast forward to the early colonial days, and you'll see that the discovery of America acted as a catalyst for the age of exploration. Explorers like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro ventured into the heart of the Aztec and Incan empires, respectively, driven by the promise of gold and glory. What's astonishing here is that these encounters ignited a fundamental shift in trade patterns and power structures across the globe. As wealth flowed from the Americas to Europe, it invigorated economies and stimulated unprecedented developments. Did you know that by the mid-16th century, vast riches from the New World transformed Spain into one of the most powerful empires the world had ever known? However, amidst this burgeoning wealth lay moral implications and unforeseen consequences. The flood of resources came at a tragic cost: the exploitation of indigenous peoples, the introduction of new diseases, and the irreversible impact on ecosystems. The Spaniards, driven by insatiable greed, decimated entire populations in their quest for gold, turning vibrant civilizations into mere remnants of what they once were. This dark chapter of colonial history forces us to ask ourselves, at what cost did this new world come to be? Ultimately, millions of lives were affected, and the scars of colonization would last generations. Yet, the discussion doesn't stop there. While we often focus on the wars and conquests associated with European colonialism, we also need to reflect on the cultural exchanges that emerged from this collision of worlds. With the arrival of Europeans came the intertwining of diverse traditions, knowledge, and beliefs. The Columbian Exchange, an extraordinary transfer of crops, animals, and ideas between the old world and the new, resulted in discoveries that still shape our lives today. Did you know that without America's contributions, the dishes we hold dear, such as tomatoes, potatoes, and chocolate, might not even exist in their current forms? Now, let's touch upon a topic that might surprise you. What role did religion play in this expedition into the unknown? The age of exploration was not simply a quest for riches but also for souls. Europeans were fueled by a sense of divine mission, aiming to spread Christianity to indigenous populations they viewed as heathens. Imagine the fervor of missionaries setting sail alongside conquistadors, armed with Bibles in one hand and swords in the other. This intertwining of faith and conquest adds another layer of complexity to the narrative of America's discovery. What transforms might we witness if we look at this period through a spiritual lens? As we delve deeper, let's turn our attention to the long-term effects of colonization. Picture a world where Europe embraced a new social hierarchy, wealth dictated power. The emergence of global trade networks interconnected nations in ways that had yet to be imagined. The flurry of commerce brought raw materials from the Americas to European markets, contributing to the rise of capitalism as we know it. Here's something that may leave you astonished. By the end of the 17th century, the economic landscape of Europe had been fundamentally realigned as nations scrambled to stake their claim in this new global arena. The question remains, how would nations adapt to maintain their influence in this game of power and wealth? Consider how technology evolved during this era. The introduction of new agricultural practices and the influx of various crops, such as sugarcane, forever changed economies and societies. The production of sugar became so lucrative that it led to the establishment of plantations and the importation of enslaved peoples from Africa, a horrific practice that echoes through history even today. This transition to a plantation economy not only heightened the demand for labor but also sowed the seeds of systemic inequality still felt in contemporary society. What kind of legacy does this leave us, and how can we reconcile it with our understanding of progress? The ripple effects of Columbus's journey extended into the political sphere as well. The discovery of America instigated fierce competition among European powers for territorial dominance. England, France, and the Netherlands all sought to expand their empires and exploit the newfound resources. The race for colonies became a matter of national pride, ambitions, and rivalries. Picture the power struggles that erupted in both Europe and America as countries vied for control, battles fought not just for land, but for a stake in the narrative of human progress. What strategies would nations employ to assert their dominance in this brave new world? But the story doesn't end there. As more explorers followed in Columbus's footsteps, a profound realization began to take shape. America was not just a land of riches, it was home to vast, diverse populations with rich cultures, histories, and philosophies. This realization ignited debates in Europe about the rights of indigenous peoples, sparking philosophical movements that sought to reconcile these conflicts. Figures such as Bartolomé de las Casas took a stand against colonial abuses, advocating for the humanity of the indigenous populations. But here's a twist, these arguments about human rights were just beginning to blossom during this age of exploration. What ideologies and moral frameworks would arise from these discussions, ultimately influencing future human rights movements? Now, let's dive into how the emergence of the Americas as a significant power player on the world stage created an environment ripe for the exchange of ideas. With voyagers crossing the Atlantic to discover new territories, scientists, philosophers, and artists began to embrace ideas that would eventually lead to the Enlightenment. The merging of European Enlightenment thought with indigenous wisdom paved the way for new governance philosophies, drawing upon concepts like liberty, democracy, and social contracts. Can you envision how the discovery of America might become an integral chapter in the stories of revolutionary movements that would follow in the coming centuries? As we continue to pull the threads of this intricate tapestry, consider the ways in which this event would shape future migrations. The discovery of America not only attracted settlers but also led to the forced migration of enslaved Africans and the displacement of indigenous peoples. With every new wave of immigrants, the cultural landscape of America grew richer and more complex. This blend of global cultures would eventually lay the groundwork for the vibrant, diverse nation we know today. How did this confluence of identities forge America into a melting pot, and what challenges did it face along the way? So now you might be asking yourself, how does this all tie back to the original question of the discovery's impact on global history? The story doesn't end on a single note of conquest or exploitation but entangles itself with themes of resilience, adaptation, and change. The legacy of Columbus's journey is both fraught with conflict and illuminated by the remarkable exchanges that it sparked. The triumph and tragedy, the hope and despair, they all converge to teach us about humanity's potential for growth and recreation. As we're nearing the halfway mark of this exploration, it's crucial to recognize that the discovery of America did not merely alter the history of the Americas, it prompted a reevaluation of the very foundations of global interaction. The realization that cultures are not isolated but interconnected is one of the most profound takeaways from this era. The questions that arise are staggering. How do we reconcile the beauty and tragedy of this complexity? What lessons remain relevant in our own world today, where globalization continues to shape our lives? So, as we pause here, we've opened a myriad of pathways leading us further into this intricate narrative of discovery. What awaits us in the second part of our exploration? Stay tuned, as we unveil the unexpected twists and the continuing legacy of America's discovery, how it shaped not just nations, but the very essence of what it means to be human in an interconnected world. As we step into the second half of our exploration, let's dive into the effects of the discovery of America that extend far beyond the initial waves of colonization. With the establishment of settlements, an era of encounters begins, not only between Europeans and indigenous cultures but also among different European powers competing for dominance in this newly unveiled territory. Colonial powers, driven by a relentless pursuit of resources and power, established a system of empires that thrived on the exploitation of land and labor. The mercantile policies of the European nations transformed local economies, imposing foreign systems onto diverse societies. Take, for example, the British colonies in North America, where tobacco and cotton plantations became symbols of wealth but were also rooted in enslavement and exploitation. This trade not only enriched European coffers but also created a complex web of trade routes, social,